Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this is going to be a video on white supremacy and white nationalism a bit, and a little bit on systematic racism. And I kind of want to make the point that those who speak about white supremacy and white nationalism and all these things, and in a negative light, I'm speaking, when they speak about it that way, really they're being racist, because nobody ever talks about like Japanese nationalism or African nationalism as a negative thing. We just assume that those living in those countries are, should be proud of their country, proud of their ethnicity, and that they should be their society should be based on their ethnic culture. So we make those assumptions for other countries, but we should make those same assumptions for white countries as well. White countries like Canada used to be the United States. Now it's only 63% white. They had a cultural identity, and that cultural identity created the system that formed the country, that created the laws, the way of life, the institutions within the country. And they always say that culture flows from race or ethnicity. Well, laws and society flow from culture. And what ends up happening is, if you see that there's systemic racism, and you see that, you believe that that's the case, really what you're experiencing is that you have a different cultural understanding than the culture that you're in. So if, for example, if you're Black and you're in United States or in Canada, and you're like, well, this is so racist. Something is systematically working against me. Well, it could be the case that you're right. And it could be the case that the reason you're right isn't that the system is designed to negatively impact you, but the system is actually designed to help foster white culture because it's based on white culture. A lot of the ways white societies advanced over the years was they came up with systems that were very different than other countries. For example, we valued the idea of individual freedoms and individual rights. Not many countries actually have those same philosophies. And it's really that which forms a lot of our legal system. So if you feel that it's discriminatory, it's maybe because your cultural identity is telling you that this is not the way we should be, and that you have a different identity than the one that would mesh well with this systematic or cultural identity of the West. For example, another thing that's very different. We really do believe in personal responsibility, and that's a very important aspect of white culture. And we always say, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, or make yourself, never blame others for what you have done, and focus on, building yourself up. And believe it or not, that's very different than some other cultures. Some other cultures, it's really the opposite that they think, where they really say, well, if this person fails, it's because of their culture, because of the society around them. And they believe in that. They believe that that's the truth, that every individual within the society is kind of dependent on the greater society. Whereas that's sort of a very opposite philosophy to Western philosophy, where we believe more that the individual holds the greatest responsibility and they have to be their own master. And we believe in that freedom. So if you come from that society where, well, you believe that, hey, it's not my fault that I did these things, And you're in a society that believes that everyone has to take personal responsibility. Well, you're going to be like, well, that's not fair. And it's because it's culturally against your culture. But that doesn't make you right. That actually makes you not like the culture that you're in, the society that you're in that in many ways you're incompatible to it. So one of the things that I'm really trying to convey here is that a lot of these times when people say it's systematically racist or it's symbolic of white supremacy, what they might be actually sensing is the white culture, the predominant white culture. And they're basically suggesting that they're not compatible with that culture. So they have to sort of self-reflect. Do they want to really be part of this society? Do they want to assimilate to this society? And if they don't, then I recommend that they leave and find a society that actually meshes better with their sense of how things should operate. Because you'll always be at conflict. It's sort of like when I went to Korea, I lived there for 3 years, and there was many things that really I didn't jive well with. There's a lot of things where I could see that they were doing things in a really strange way. And for example, there was a lot of corruption where there was a lot of bribery and stuff like that. But that system actually worked well for them. In some ways, North America, like we're not so corrupt, but the government is so intrusive that it might as well be corrupt, because you always have to pay different fines and different fees to do anything. In Asia, it's much simpler. You just bribe somebody and then you can do whatever you want. Well, and it's much quicker. So in a way, the two systems, one might seem like more efficient. It's corrupt, but it might be more efficient. And those people that are used to that system will feel, why do we have this thing that's slow and tedious, lots of forms to fill out, all this kind of bureaucracy. And they might not understand that that's part of being fair and being, one of the things with white culture is that we really do love the idea of a system of laws and protections and all these things that do add bureaucracy, but they also remove corruption. So there's wins and losses to each type of culture, and their setup within these societies are different. And if you try to bring one into another, you can have conflict, and it will feel like you're being discriminated against. But really, the same rules apply to everyone. It's just these are the rules of the land. There's an old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And this is the same idea, that what you're maybe experiencing, if you're feeling that there's like some systematic racism or white supremacy or some thing like that, well, maybe you're just experiencing what that white culture really is. There's lots of examples like this where things in one culture are considered normal and considered fine, but in another culture considered very, very bad. A good example of this, and I'm not going to complain too much about Muslims, but this is a truth about Muslims. When they believe in marriage between relatives, and the reason they believe in that is it was kind of a common practice for a long time, and it's a way of keeping families tight knit and keeping wealth within families, and there is benefits to marrying of cousins. However, in the West, we very frown upon this because there's genetic issues and a whole bunch of things. In Muslim culture, though, they actually look into the genetic things and try to avoid it for the most part. Still, though, I think there's a lot of issues with the interbreeding of cousins. And actually, the cases of this, the percentage is quite high. I was surprised when I looked up the stat. It's like 60% of 60% of Muslim marriages within Middle East and in Northern Africa are actually between close relatives. So it's a really high percentage. Now that kind of behavior would be considered unacceptable. Another behavior that would be considered unacceptable is the marriage of multiple wives. In some cultures, that's considered normal and it's considered reasonable. Every so often, I wish that was part of our culture, but it's not. And but that's the way it is. And if you're from that culture and you come to here, you might be like, why can't I marry my cousin, or or why can't I behave this way? Another really good example with Muslims, and sorry to pick on Muslims too much, but is that we really try to not only protect human rights, but we try to protect animal rights. We actually have a very humane society in terms of the way we treat animals. And the way we actually kill animals, we try to find the least painful way of killing the animal. Well, if you know anything about halal, the way that they prepare the meat is very, very painful to the animal. Usually the animal feels pain right up till 5 minutes after they've been, killed, or tried to be killed, I should say. Because what happens is, to prepare halal meat, you must drain all the blood. So what they do is they slit the animal's throat and sort of hang it so that all the blood can flow out of the animal, and it's very painful to the animal, but it drains it of all the blood, and then they're doing a blessing at the same time of the animal, so that they the meat will be religiously correct for them. Whereas the Western method is we do the instant kill. So the difference between the two is striking. I'm actually surprised that halal meat is even allowed in North America because of all the protections that we have. Actually, based on Canadian law, it shouldn't be allowed. It's amazing that they get away with it. But the way that they get away with it is so funny, because they say that it's for religious or ritual sacrifices. So therefore, it's a religious protection that allows them to do it. However, nowadays, that halal meat is being used within a whole bunch of industries. So, it's being used for non-Muslim people. So I really think that they should look into that one. But that's a whole new can of worms of things. But as I said, this would be, if, for example, if all of a sudden the government cracked down on that and actually prevented all halal meat from being allowed in Canada, well, obviously the Muslim, groups within Canada would freak. They would be like, well, this is discriminatory. It would be discriminatory in a way, but at the same time, it's based on the system of laws that we have here, that we believe, and this is a very strong belief within the European and North American culture. We believe in protecting the rights of animals, that we don't cause them undue harm. And again, that's showing how the two societies, the two cultures, are not compatible. And I imagine what's going to happen as time progresses, there will be a move where they'll say, well, we want this, we want to change the rules within countries like Canada and the United States to meet our cultural needs. I see that is the way things are going. But the question is, do we lose what makes these countries great in the process? So this has been my sort of look into systemic racism and white supremacy. So a lot of these things are really just when cultures aren't compatible, and there's that feeling that that it's treating them unfairly based on their own cultural needs. So that's my way of understanding of it. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I'd love to hear your feedback. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And please, I'm sincere about this. Comment below. Give me your feedback. If you're Muslim, this is your chance to defend your culture and say, hey, it is compatible with this Western philosophy. I don't see it, but please defend it. I'd love to hear your opinions. Well, thank you for listening. Bye.